Hello, everybody. This is the Helping Friendly podcast. We're here. I'm RJ. We're here with Megan, Brian, and Jonathan. The gang is here. Hey, gang.
Hello.
Hey, RJ.
Hey. So here we are. We're starting this new project, and I don't know if we are ready to take on a project of this magnitude, but we're gonna do it today. Brian,
RJ, why are you like underselling us right out the bat?
I just want to know if you guys
ready for this.
I just want to know if you guys think we're ready. Brian, are we ready?
Well, I have two thoughts. Not to divert us immediately.
Hang on. Brian was born ready.
Right off the bat.
This is like, it
Yeah.
wasn't
This is
his
what I was-
idea,
this
but
is-
you'd believe it was.
This is what I was born to do. Number one, do you think that Phish was ready when they walked on stage, if there even was a stage, on December 2nd, 1983? We'll table that question for later. And number two, I just realized I'm the only person here who is not yet 40. Am I qualified to talk about Phish
Wow.
yet, or do I need to be 40 years old to talk
No,
about
it's
Phish?
debatable. It's debatable.
I don't think I
That's
know anything
incredible.
about Phish because I only started seeing Phish after they took their first hiatus. We'll table that conversation for later as well.
Jonathan, do you think we're ready?
I can only speak for myself, and that I am probably not ready. But as usual, I will try anyways.
Megan has already said that she thinks we're ready, so we're
I'm
at least
ready. I did my homework.
50% ready. So this is the 40 for 40 project that we are starting today. We're going to bring you 40 Phish shows and some side project shows, because some of you smart people out there might know that in the 40 years that Phish has existed, they have not played every year. So we're going to figure that out, and we have ideas, but we're trying to celebrate this 40th anniversary. And, you know, three of us know what it's like to turn 40. And so we'll be trying to channel that into these discussions. And thank you. Thank you, Elliot, for believing in HF Pod,
Thanks,
for tuning
Elliot.
in. So one thing you should do, we're going to be putting up more bonus content, and we're going to record a bonus episode right after this. So you can get a bunch of free stuff, ad-free stuff. It's not free, but it's free in a lot of ways. You get bonus episodes, ad-free content, and more, and help us out. It's several dollars a month, $4.99. Go to osirispod.com/premium to check it out. All right. So before we get into it, how's everybody doing?
Doing good.
Well,
Doing good. I can't speak for everybody on this.
I'm
call
doing
here.
great. I'm so happy we're all together. This is like our first episode of the new year, because Jonathan and I just did a look back the year before on New Year's Eve's shows. So this is like a new beginning for us. It's exciting.
It is.
Feels
It's
good.
super exciting. It's great.
Mhm.
And we're all, we're all here for this. Also, we are going to bring, just so you guys know, throughout this 40 show project, we're going to bring back other co-hosts from HF Pod history. There are only a couple, but I've talked to them both, and they've both said that they're going to come on at some point. We're going to bring on special guests. We're going to we're just going to hang out and have fun and talk about Phish. But we have to start in the first year, and that was 1983, and Brian was not yet alive.
Not even yet conceived, based
Wow.
on the data that we discovered this morning.
Brian collected a lot of data.
That's really weird.
I don't think that any of us were of show-going age in 1983.
No, I was so young.
What was your guys' first concert? I think that's a good starter here.
New Kids on the Block.
And when was that?
Grateful Dead.
Was it really, Jonathan?
That's so on brand.
Yeah.
Stop
That
it.
is so on brand. That really
No
tracks.
way. You definitely
Yep.
saw some like lame 80s one-hit wonder that you
on.
won't let us
Nope.
know about. No?
My
Okay.
parents wouldn't let me go to concerts or any of that stuff. My friends
Wow.
were all going to like U2 Joshua Tree tour, and I was
That's cool.
mad,
Hmm.
or Rush or whatever. I was less mad about
That's
missing that.
cool.
But
Hmm.
but yeah, I had to kind of like sneak off to go see Go to Dead at RFK in '91.
So you didn't see
Wow.
any concerts in the 1980s. Megan, did you see any concerts in the 1980s?
No, I don't think so. No, I saw New Kids on the Block when I was 12.
I did
was
watch
a
a
huge New Kids fan.
I did watch a shit ton of MTV though, so that should count.
That counts. There you go.
That does
Counts
count.
for something. RJ,
I
what about
saw-
you?
I saw my first concert. My brother, my older brother, my stepbrother took me to see Nine Inch Nails when I was 13.
Damn. That's hardcore.
It was wild.
Nice.
It's
It
a
was
really
wild.
good show.
Really,
That's
really
amazing.
influenced my
Can-
live music perspective going forward.
Can
That's
Can
amazing.
we put-
Actually, mine was in the 80s. It was 89.
Oh, look at
Nice.
that.
Yeah.
Can we
Look at
put
that.
Brian Storm's comment up on here? Because I just want to say it makes me feel decrepit and aged.
At first, I thought it was a joke, but then I realized that it's not.
That it's Ryan. It's just like they call him
Oh,
Young
8.
Ryan for reasons.
Unbelievable. Young Ryan,
Lord.
young and powerful Ryan is what I call him. Thanks, Ryan, for tuning in and for
I'm going to
joining
need
us.
my wife to bring my cane up before I get out of this chair later.
Oh my God.
The fact that I own a cane should tell you stuff.
Brian.
Well,
Yeah,
I
that's
at least saw concerts in the 1990s, so I've got that
There you
going
go.
for me.
We'll get
What
there.
was your
Second
first
Clinton
concert, Brian?
administration. U2 Pop Mart. I'm looking at the concert ticket
Mm.
right now. Bono came out in a muscular suit, and I lost my mind.
How old were you?
12.
That is wild. All right. So we've covered a lot of ground already, but Brian, you did some research for this first show. I don't
did.
think we actually talked about this particular show on Undermine when we went into the 80s. I mean, we talked about like this era, right? But I don't think we talked about this
believe we
particular
did.
show. Did we talk about
Undermine
it with Jeff?
season 1,
Mhm.
episode 2 was the HF Pod Roundtable. There were 3 of those
Oh,
in
yeah.
that season. Remember we did like every
Yes.
episode we kind of adjusted things. You guys talked about this show through, I want to say Halloween 86. You took like 2 batches or 3 batches of 1980 shows. And
Yes.
there's some good stuff in there. I went back and I listened to it this morning. Jonathan has a lot to say. I'm going to try to quote as much of what he had to say about it.
It's good because I don't
Um,
remember any of it.
That's okay. I remember everything. But it was good. I mean, it's the first show. It's a notable moment in the band's history. It's a notable moment in music history. It's a notable moment in all of our histories, as regardless if we're not aware of it in the moment. But yeah, we definitely cover this in Undermine season 1.
And we got to talk to Jeff Holdsworth, who was in the band at this time as well, which is pretty cool. Brian, but you did some extensive research to try to learn about what happened in 1983 and what the world was like way back then. My daughter, who's only 9, asked me the other day if we had washing machines when I was a kid. So I don't know if that's how your
That's
perspective
amazing.
was on the 80s, Brian, but there's it was
It's-
a long time ago.
It's really funny because my son is really obsessed with watching YouTube historical breakdowns of gaming systems that he likes to play. And he makes fun of me every time they have stuff that comes up in the 90s. And I thought Nintendo 64 was so advanced. And he's like, the graphics suck, Dad. What is going on?
It was a big
So
deal,
cute.
man.
It was a big deal. And that's like 15 years after this. But no, just a quick bit of factoid about the 1983 period, the late 1983 era that we find ourselves in. The number 1 song in America is Lionel Richie's All Night Long. And the top 5 songs of this week in 1983, I mean, we got some bangers here. We've got some absolute bangers. We've got Come On Feel the Noise. I've got it pulled up here. Hold on one second. You guys can edit this out, right? That's possible.
Yeah.
No, we don't do that anymore. It's a new world.
Shit.
Time
I'm pulling it up right
is
now.
literal. And sorry, I just make fun of you while you look for it. And I will say, come on, feel the noise, dude. Loved
Quiet
that
Riot.
song when it was all the
Yeah,
hell
that was a
love that song.
a big hit. Yeah.
We've got
Although I'm
All Night
shocked to see
Long.
how
You were shocked to see how it was spelled, although it makes
it
sense.
was. Mhm.
Lionel Richie, Say, Paul McCartney, and Michael Jackson.
God, I remember
Islands.
that video. It's like a
Islands in the
wagon
Stream,
cart
Kenny
with hay
Rogers.
in it. It's weird.
Yeah. It was a good video. Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton, and really fitting. Kind of like a middle finger to Phish, more so than the ROTC gang who was yelling at Phish to stop playing on this evening. Uptown Girl by Billy Joel.
Oh, you just had to be there, didn't it?
It just had to be there.
I wish Phish would just get over it and cover Billy Joel. Maybe next time. Like, let's just like really just do it. Just to like tear the band-aid off of all this anti-Billy Joel nonsense. Because I'm not the biggest Billy Joel fan, but I respect the guy. He can write a song. He can crash a car. Like, he can do it all. And Phish fans need to recognize he was married to Christy goddamn Brinkley, for Christ's sake.
It was.
Yeah, but why does he have to
So-
be such a dick?
I think that two things. One,
Who says he really is?
there should be an MSG Harpua that includes Piano Man
Yes.
in the
That
midst
would
of
be
it,
so
with a
awesome.
vacuum
With
solo.
the Piano Man.
That's going to be this year.
Him coming out, or like
Yeah.
someone like the Tom Hanks thing from the 2002 New Year's Eve, just like random bald guy with a goatee comes out on
Yes.
stage and bows to the crowd all dramatically like Billy Joel would.
Mhm.
But
I would trim
my wedding
beard
song,
for that.
my wedding song is a Billy Joel song. Which every time people are like Billy
Wow.
Joel sucks, I'm like, yeah, but
I saw him in
Hmm.
concert and he kind of sucked.
I think
I
his
can
music's
imagine.
just kind of boring. It's like a little boring,
It
I
was so
think.
boring. Yeah,
I
it
would
was so
agree.
boring.
But
I was also like doing a lot of things that would make the show
doesn't-
not very fun.
yeah.
Like I was having too much fun, and then I went into a Billy Joel concert, and I was like,
mm,
"What? This is not as
That's-
much fun." Yeah,
I think
Wrong
if you
taste.
yeah,
if you have
totally.
if you're from a like the tri-state area, then there's like a more than 50% chance that you like Billy Joel. Tri-state
It's
in this case
genetic.
being New Jersey, New York, Connecticut.
just by
think
default.
It's
If you go
genetic.
outside of that region, then it's like a 20% chance. I think there's some geography here.
I think
but
if you like pastrami, no, no, I just think that the guy is a lot better than Phish fans are willing to give him credit. And Uptown Girl is an interesting track. It's deep throwback. It could have been Huey Lewis,
Well, it's part of that early 80s throwback to the 50s. You had
right? That's
Neil
what I'm
Young
saying.
making an album about pink
Mhm.
Cadillacs. You had Huey Lewis at that point in time.
Oh, I
with a
used
bunch
to
of other
love Huey
stuff.
Lewis. Used to love
Huey
him.
Lewis still rocks.
Mhm.
But,
I
you
really
you
liked
had-
him.
Still beating.
You had a big pushback. Reagan was president. Everyone was looking back to the 1950s as though it was the greatest period that had ever existed. The music at that point in time, nothing has ever been better than mid 1950s sock hops. Am I right?
Brian,
No.
I'm sorry thank you for all that context, but I can't believe that you didn't mention the single by Bruce Springsteen called Pink Cadillac, which also came out in that era, 1984, as the B-side to Dancing in the Dark. I mean, that was
He was
just
going
waiting
to
for
save
you.
that for 84.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm
we're
really.
like-
not there yet.
I'm more of a Magic Johnson than a Michael Jordan. I was sitting there waiting for you, passing the ball. Okay, I'm not scoring on every shot here.
So what is this podcast about again?
It's about the
Unclear.
1980s.
A really short Phish concert, so we gotta talk about some other things. So we
Can
can
I just say
Good point.
two
RJ,
other
this is
things?
like what you told us to do. Come on, we're like building it up. We're getting there.
That's true. Okay. All right. Sorry.
he
I'm
wrote the
just kidding.
script and then forgot what was in it.
I'm getting
Really?
anxious to talk about this show that we have only heard 2 songs of.
The number one movie in America at this time was Terms of Endearment, which I've never
Mm.
seen, but I've heard is a classic.
My
Classic.
parents
Endearing.
definitely saw it.
Yeah.
And the persons of the year of 1983. Are you ready for this? Anybody have any guesses? It's 2 people. Persons of the year, 1983.
83.
No, I was a very small child. I don't know.
Maybe like the guy who performed the first kind of weird surgery or something that I can't remember, or
What?
that's all I got.
That weird surgery. You're right. Yeah, that was a good weird surgery.
I was gonna say
um,
open heart surgery, but was that like in the 60s?
That was
Probably.
probably a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
sooner,
Maybe 40s.
It's like out on the range or something. I don't know. Ronald Reagan and the former Soviet leader Yuri Andropov. They would be named the persons of the year. The love affair had started, and it would just carry on throughout the 1980s.
Yeah. That's like
Well, they
I
had
don't-
signed
I'm
some
not sure about that.
major
Yeah.
deproliferation agreement
Yes.
that year, or some nonsense.
Yes, which
but
was the most important thing that happened.
but they still sucked. Let's be clear.
Yes. Let's be very
Majorly.
clear. But you know who didn't suck? Trey Anastasio, Mike Gordon, John Fishman, Mark Daubert, and Jeff Holdsworth. And for you out there who's saying, what about Paige McConnell? We'll see you in 1985.
Yeah, just tune in later.
And for those of you who don't know, they were not even called Phish at this point for this show.
But there's disagreement about what they were called, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
For this concert, they were called Duran Duran. It was an amazing, amazing concert.
So Blackwood Convention is that's the name that the band remembers being billed as. So is there controversy?
Yeah, I thought I saw an article where Trey was saying that they were never called that.
Yeah,
Well,
Ryan is citing that down here in Ryan Storm in the chat is citing it that they denied.
Yeah.
They've disavowed the Blackwood
I don't mean to
Convention.
burst anyone's bubble, but this happens with Trey. His
Yes.
memory
He's
from
not
a
the
long time ago
accurate
is
source.
different than his memory now. So I'm just gonna go with his previous memory, which was closer to the time that this actually happened. But I don't know. Maybe it's not. We'll never know.
Trey also got yelled at by Phish fans in the middle of a concert in Sacramento when he suggested he had played a concert there 5 years prior. And they were like, no, it's been 20 years, jerk.
Yeah. I'm just
We've
saying
been waiting. We could never go to another city.
We built a whole new arena.
The Phish fans' collective memory is slightly better than Trey's. I'm just saying it might not be in this case, but at any rate, the band that was maybe called Phish played at this place, and there weren't a lot of people there. I think based on the photos we've seen and the the recording, you can hear like one person talking. But Brian, what do we need to know before we talk about the few songs that are released from the show?
I mean, a lot of what we know about this show comes directly from the band. They've talked about it both in Bittersweet Motel as well as in the Phish book. It sounds as though as they would deal with, I don't think they really ever played to unfriendly crowds in the way that they play to an unfriendly crowd at this show. It kind of seems like they were booked for a gig. They had a band that had been practicing throughout the fall of 1983 and were not incredibly well received. They play a set of covers, come back for a second set. They're asked to play something a little bit more danceable, which is a weird thing to ask Phish, knowing what we know of Phish now, knowing of like 1997 Phish, that like you put it on and you can't help but dance unless you're a total hater. Nowadays, like people are dancing horribly, but like they're dancing at Phish shows. That's like a thing that you do at Phish shows. Not all of us. Some of us, most of us.
I just want to say,
99%.
if you've seen Trey dance on stage,
it's what we all
should
look
feel
like.
perfectly okay with that.
Oh yeah, you can dance however you want at a Phish show, but maybe this
is true.
Motivated them to become a dance band.
I was dancing in my living room to 12:29 and my son was making fun of me and I was like, this is it. But no, to get us back on track, it seems as though they play a gig here that they got booked, made some money off of, and is really it exists as the first documentation of Phish playing live. You go ahead, as we're going to talk about shows next week, the following week, into the 1980s, when the defining factors of Phish is that they play to relatively friendly crowds, people that want to go and see them, even as we're moving into the late 80s and early 90s, where they start to branch out. There's this word of mouth spectacle. And at this point in time, there's no word of mouth. They're playing at an ROTC gathering, not really what one would think is the typical Phish crowd.
Phish.net refutes the ROTC dance story from, I think they tell it in Bittersweet Motel. They note that it was not a ROTC inspired or sponsored event. It was a dorm dance in what was a primarily ROTC dorm. Mike Gordon also lived there, though. So it was just in what was probably commonly known as the ROTC dorm, but not an official we wear uniforms on campus sort of event.
I appreciate that.
Sorry.
Context. No, that's very helpful. I'm pulling it up right now again.
breaking things in my office. Please continue.
So okay, let's just look. Can we just talk briefly about what we hear, because we only
RJ,
hear
why don't you tell us about the
the
music?
end. All we hear, all that exists, is this part of set 2, which is
Right.
Scarlet Begonias, Into Fire on the Mountain, 2 originals debuts by Phish that the Grateful Dead would go on to cover extensively over the years.
Yeah, all the way back.
That's
to
about all. That's about all we
1977.
get.
It's so crazy though to think that they were playing songs that, like, to think that
Yeah.
Scarlet Begonias
Yeah.
and Fire on the Mountain were only 6 years old. Like, that's kind of crazy.
Well, Scarlet goes back to 1974, but the pairing
Yeah.
goes back to
The
77.
pairing, yeah.
I mean, I was thinking about that, like based on where we are currently. This is a young jam band playing a show later in 2023 covering Everything's Right, or covering, like think of a Phish song, or think of another jam band song from 2017 that's already deemed a classic, but it's still like pretty recent history at this point in time.
I
don't
wonder
think it's
how
that
much
crazy.
how much dancing do you think was done at this dorm dance? Because based on the number of people there, I don't think there was that much dancing happening. Do you think any dancing happened at all, or do you think it was just people like sitting quietly watching them?
I think sitting and having conversations while the band played louder and louder is probably.
Yeah, I don't think they were listening, it sounds like.
Yeah, I don't think that people really cared. I think that it leads to one of my like initial questions about this show, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot since we first did Undermine season 1, where I spent like 5 months living in 1980s Phish, which I'd never spent that much time doing before. And like I kept coming back to, who were they writing music for in 1983, 1984, 1985? Like if you think about what was on the radio at the time, and you think about what they play in this show, like as it's documented, set 1 is Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress, Proud Mary, In the Midnight Hour, which is a great cover that they did in the 80s. I wish they would bring that back. Squeezebox, Roadhouse Blues, and a rendition of Happy Birthday. Who are they trying to go after? Like you would imagine exactly. Like that's kind of what I keep coming back to.
Yeah.
And their friends.
And their friends. Like,
Right.
what would we want to hear? What do we know how to play? And what would we want to play? You know, I think that's why, like, they're kind of already who they're going to be, right? They're not trying to play like Michael Jackson and other things that are on the radio.
Right. Well, and it's one of those interesting things that like, there's like a push and pull of it as Phish history unfolds. Is I'm someone very much in this camp who learned about a lot of bands I've gotten into because of Phish. Like I didn't really know the Velvet Underground or the Talking Heads before I heard Phish cover those albums. And then I went and did my own deep dives, and there's a ton of one-off covers that Phish has done. I'm sure that they've introduced a number of people to like a recent band like TV on the Radio just by covering Golden Age over the last decade or so. Like they've served as this kind of guide for a lot of listeners who, for a variety of reasons, don't have the knowledge of American rock history. But that's also something you do when you're like established. Like a lot of young bands just pick 10 cover songs to play that, like, no matter who you care about seeing when you're going to see a bar band, you're going to know that song and it's going to make your night feel a little bit better. You may walk out being like, that band was really cool, even if you don't do anything with that memory or that sort of information. It's just like they're so clearly at this point in time playing music already just for themselves without really care of what the audience takes away from it. It's pretty fascinating to me.
Yeah, I think there's a kind of bit of an agreement between the band too. You look at who these guys were. We have some evidence of Mike's pre-Phish music, Dre's pre-Phish music, and we know a little bit about Jeff and what he was into, and you get an idea. They have to come together somewhere too, because this is what a band has to do, is they have to agree on who they are, what they want to sound like, and honestly, what song do you know? And let's play that one. No, that one's, I don't like that song. Let's not play that. I can't sing that song. Or Trey, that song's too weird or tricky. We're not going to do that one. And this is where they land here in the first few months of their existence. And they wouldn't stay here for very long, which I think is worth noting.
No, this is a band
Yeah.
that is going to evolve rapidly. RJ, I have a question for you. If you got a tape of this show, you're a freshman at UVM, you're trying to figure out what to do on your Friday nights. If you get a tape of this show in early 1984, are you going to see this band?
I mean, I think probably just because of the Dead covers. Yes, I think that's like the one thing that would. I mean, it depends how well they played Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress also, because I'm a stickler for those details. If there are any flubs, then I'm out. But assuming that they play it well and they play the Grateful Dead, then I am in. I think I'm in.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you won't listen to any 1999 Phish. It's really unfortunate because you just can't do the flubs.
Can't deal with it.
Megan, would you go and see this band?
Totally. Yeah, I think they sound amazing. I mean, think about like how old they were, and this is their first time they're ever playing. I mean, there are bands that I hear play Grateful Dead that don't sound half as good as this, that are, full of like 45-year-old men that have been playing for 20 years. I mean, this is pretty good for your first time out. It's like tempo's good. They have, you can tell they're all like great musicians already, and they're like, I think that especially like Mike and Fishman really stand out as having this like groove that's kind of locked in and impressive. And Trey sounds amazing. I mean, I think his singing too, he's not doing that like weird Zappa style singing that he gets into. He's just kind of trying to sing a little bit more earnestly. And I think it works.
Anytime somebody suggests Trey as being earnest, it just makes me laugh on the inside.
I wish that they would say he was being Ernesto, but we'll leave it.
I'll say that next time.
It's okay. It's just the first one. Trey does sound amazing. Trey
Really?
does.
You mean singing?
No,
his guitar. It sounds
his tone is
incredible.
good. Yeah,
Like
it sounds easy.
You can hear Trey. It's Trey.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not like here's a guy, because I think he was playing like an Ibanez guitar at this point in time. Like it's not just like a guy trying to play Jerry Garcia. Like you hear his voice. Like it like when his solo comes in, it like emerges out of the sound cloud that like, I mean, it's
still a little murky in there.
People complain about the recordings nowadays. But it's, you hear that just like lyrical conversational, like approach that he takes, where every time he takes a solo, he's not just working up and down a scale, like he's actually saying something. And to hear that from someone who at this point in time was, how old was he? 18, 19 years old, like already speaking in his own language. It's just wild. It's not like it's Trey Anastasio from 1992 is already there, but like you can hear it. It's really, really incredible to hear him at this point in time.
Yeah, and the Incredible Perp, we only have the Scarlet Fire. That's all we have a recording of. They said on Bittersweet Motel that they repeated a bunch of the songs, like they played the first set and then played all those songs again. I don't know if that's true, if that's also like faulty memory, but it's funny.
Never trust a prankster. And the reason that's in my head though is you can hear that attitude as well from Trey in the very beginning of this recording. You hear a audience member, somebody who's like, "Hey, what are you guys gonna play?" And he tells her, and she's like, "What?" He says, "Scarlet Begonias." She says, "What?" And he tells her, "What?" He repeats it, tells the whole thing. I think he maybe says it's a Grateful Dead. I can't. It's a little murky because it's not like they're speaking into microphones. And she's asking, "Do you know any slow dance numbers?" And yeah, that's not going to happen. And you can just tell. Then their tuning gets a little frantic and is kind of amusing. And he makes that comment about it's not all about precision or something.
Not always an exercise in precision.
That's it. Which is deeply ironic as compared to the band this would become in, say, 9 years.
It gives off the feeling that they've had some really good band practices, which I think is we
Part of the legend.
it's part of the legend, and it's one of those things. I'm blanking on people's names right now, but we got a number of people interviewed for Undermine season 1 who talked about the band forming and talked about just like the initial vibe of like John Fishman playing drums at all hours of the night in their dorm rooms, and like the friendship that was that was found on like day one between Phish and Trey, which is really at the heart of everything that is Phish. Regardless, the fact that I only go back and listen to this tape when I'm required to, which of late has been more than in the past. It's always enlightening to go back to it, but this is not something I'm like reaching for listening to. But you can hear just in those little jokes from Trey at the start, just in the connection, just in like the way that Mike and Fishman, like Mike sounds amazing. Fishman is playing off beat and around the beat, and he's like throwing these fills in. Like you just hear a band that regardless of, them playing legitimate concerts at this point in time, they are they're close friends already, and they already have like a connection in a way that is going to shape so much of what's going to come beyond the brilliant music we're going to hear.
I love that you guys had those reactions, because I listened to it today and I was like, this kind of sucks. So I'm glad that you guys have a different reaction than I did.
Well,
now
I
need
just
to
want
go
to
back
tell
and listen
you,
to that.
What did I tell you, Jonathan?
it has
What
a
did I tell
rating.
you?
Yeah. It has a rating on Phish.net, which is hilarious to me.
Does it really?
3.776. Like, I think that's so funny. Like, how can you rate this show? Like, who went on there and was like,
They should
I'm gonna
block
give
it. It's not.
3 star. I mean, it's so silly. I just thought that was hilarious.
Look, objectively, taking all knowledge of that this is Phish or would become Phish or whatever, it is. The Scarlet Begonias itself is not played that well. Clunky, murky in the recording, so it's hard to tell for sure. The jam is not bad, actually. Jam's kind of interesting. And Fire on the Mountain is fine. And maybe even good, but Fire on the Mountain is a 2-chord song. So like it better be.
There's a lot of bands that have tried to play Fire on the Mountain and cannot get those 2 chords
Yeah.
just exactly perfect as
B and A. Come on, people.
I do want to. Can I just add something else about the era? Because this is Brian's research about 1983 led me to read a little bit about 1983, because I was only 4. But I think we talked a lot about in the past about like the evolution of the community alongside the band, and it just struck me that like 83 was considered to be the kind of like the beginning of the internet, because they like migrated the ARPANET to something that Jonathan could probably explain.
They began using the TCP/IP protocol on ARPANET, which is the protocol in which all of this is happening.
So
What?
like it was the beginning of the internet. It was the first year that that year there's the first mobile telephone call was made. It was the first, like the original Nintendo was released in Japan that year. Like it just, I don't know, if they had played their first show at UVM 3 years before this, like maybe that wouldn't have coincided with the evolution of all these other things that made Phish like so viral in the like in the not in the internet term, but like
Well, I
the word
love
of
how you
mouth
talked about
stuff.
that. Yeah, on Undermine,
You know?
like just how like the convergence of those two things was like timed pretty perfectly.
And not that like the internet, I guess, didn't really come into play with them for a while, but who knows? Like, had they started a few years before or a few years after, it's just like right place, right time. Even though if you were at that cafeteria on that day, it might not seem like it.
Well, it's one
We
of those
all
things
have
like
humble
they're going to play a
beginnings.
lot of gigs like this, not necessarily like exactly like this, but they're going to play a lot of gigs throughout the 1980s that are going to be, they're probably going to feature some people in attendance who have no idea what they're going to see, and they walk out being like, not even I don't ever need to see that again. just kind of like,
Indifference.
yeah, just very like,
Mhm.
you see some opening bands that you're just kind of like, okay, and you have
That's
nothing else to say, and you're not going to follow up with them. You're not going to follow their career, and like a lot of those bands don't ever become on the level of this band. But I don't know. There's probably 10 to 40 people at most in like at this show. It doesn't really sound like there's that many. You can hear just
No.
like then and like isolated crowd chatter.
The picture too is like there's no picture of any fans. I don't think it looks very empty,
There's
that
a
room.
couple people sitting on the far right side,
Yeah.
and there's one shadowy head directly at the bottom of the image, but also 10 to 15 feet away from the band.
Yeah.
Big open space in front. But I mean, how many times I've seen far more better established bands that
Hmm.
have a hard time getting people to get down in front and dance or
Right.
whatever.
Oh yeah.
So first gig, nobody's down in front dancing. Not a shock.
Yeah.
That is the life of, the young bar band is playing to mildly indifferent audiences and just trying to convert that one.
I
Yeah.
love it though. I love that picture because it just makes you realize like everyone starts out somewhere and it's like so small and how hard it is to do that too. Like it is depressing. Incredible Purpose, right? Like it's depressing to play in that kind of a room where people are like, you know, yelling at you to play other stuff and you have to be like make jokes about like how the song is by request even though they've been like bitching about it. And like I think that it's hard to do that, It's really really hard. And
We
it's awesome. It just makes you realize like everybody starts somewhere and like you have to push through that as an artist, right? You have to push through those years when like nobody gives a fuck about you and they're actually like not cool to you.
we all start out small.
Oh,
Somebody said that somewhere.
Yeah.
somebody.
I
I
don't
remember
know.
that. I remember
Yeah,
that
he would say
happened.
that 20
Sounds familiar to
years
me.
later or something like that. I think to your point, Megan, yeah, I don't, yeah, there's a depressing side of it, but there's also a really inspiring side of it. And it's the
Totally.
thing that like will always get me about Phish is we still do it 40 years later, where they'll do something and certain people in the fan base, I'm not going to name any names, will be like, why the hell did you guys do that? And they just do it because that's what they do. Like, that's just like they're artists who have a vision, who have an idea, they run with it. It's a different idea than what you would have done, but you're also not in their position. And you follow the big picture of it. And it's just kind of, beyond the fact that they walk on stage here and nobody cares. They're going to come back and they're going to play another gig, and then they're going to play more gigs, and they're going to play more gigs after that, and they're going to go out to Colorado and they're going to play a scam gig, and they're going to then tour around the country like 3 times in a year for 4 or 5 years straight to just try to force people onto this. There's something really inspiring about their story that I don't think could have started in any better spot than here. I mean, there's that picture from, we'll talk about this probably next week, the Nectar's upstairs gig, or maybe we'll do the Slade Hall show. I don't think we've actually decided, but we're going to do one of the 2 shows from
Leave some
1984.
mystery.
Leave a little bit of mystery here. But like there's a picture in the Phish book of them at this gig, and the dude of life is like all cladded out in weird stuff and he's dancing, and there's like a guy actually dancing in front of the band. Like that should be in some senses the first Phish gig, but it's kind of perfect that the first Phish gig is Phish just like doing Phish things in front of almost no one, and definitely no one who cares.
Yeah, I'm probably going to repeat what you said, Brian, but it
It was that
Phish
good. So
goes
just do
out
it.
and does this, right? They go out and play this show. Nobody really cares. It translates almost directly to Phish coming out at New Year's and doing the New Year's show that they want to do. And I heard read Trey describing the planning of it, and is exactly how I imagined it, which is they sat down, they started hashing out the idea, they started laughing their asses off, and without regard for whether people are going to love it, it happens that lots of us did. And, some of us were always going to, no matter what it was or what have you, regardless of whether, yeah, exactly, whether we all loved it. This is their plan. This is how they're going to do the thing. And it's always been that way. They've always said, well, this is what we're doing, and hopefully you come along with us. And
It's the only way to
one
last.
more note about the music. I want to make it clear. I think the fact that they not only are playing to a small, indifferent crowd, but they're willing to try to jam in front of a small, indifferent
that's
crowd
interesting.
is impressive.
Totally.
Even if the jam itself is just kind of like, that's okay. That's what you get when you try. Sometimes it's just okay.
So I have two questions. First of all, isn't there someone at UVM somewhere who can tell us what this band was billed as? I mean,
No.
do you think they got paid? Someone had to like write them a check.
They said they had a check. Yeah. So
So who was the check made
I
out?
mean,
Dig
Trey
out
said
the
it was like a
archives.
big check, basically. He held up a
like a sweepstakes.
I'm
paid
sure it
us.
was just a check, just a check.
I
But
mean,
Isn't it
they-
one of those
huge.
cardboard checks,
was-
like pay
It
to
was
the order
probably
of
made out to
Phish,
Trey.
F-I-
Yeah.
I mean, this is like,
Yeah.
someone
I mean, I
needs to
don't think-
go. Someone needs to
don't
They
think
weren't
go.
incorporated.
They weren't incorporated yet. I don't think
Someone
they
needs
had
to go to Burlington and get in the archives and figure out from the Harris Millis cafeteria, 12283, who paid. I mean, what
Where's
was
our
the band there?
intern?
I mean, there's obviously an announcement. There must have been a poster somewhere. They don't have us. They don't have them. We haven't seen them, but there must be one. I'm just saying we need to get to the bottom of this.
Follow
It's important.
the money.
Maybe
guys.
we will.
Follow the money.
Follow the money. Follow the money.
You had
Exactly.
another question because I have
Oh,
a
yeah.
couple questions as well.
Well, when I said that I thought it was just fine, and you told Jonathan, I told you. Did you tell Jonathan that I was going to say that?
We talked before this about. I went back and listened to your guys' Undermine episode, and I described how all of you took this show in, and I said,
Share it with the audience now.
I'll share it now. Brad said it was cool. Matt
Sounds
had
right.
something very technical to say about the tape and about the
Yep.
plane that I learned something. You said it was just fine, and Jonathan said it was a better show than most people would say it was. It was very, very much on brand of how someone would expect the original HF
good.
Bang to take the very first Phish show. There's a lot of people out there that are kind of just like, I'm not listening to that shit. Like, are you kidding
I'm
me?
just
Like,
glad
I
I'm
love this band.
consistent.
I'm not listening to that shit. But like, I'll listen to it. You'll listen to it. We're all historians of this, but we all take it the way that we do. I have to figure out a way for this show to fit into the Reagan narrative. Jonathan has to figure out a way to elevate this show more than it should be. RJ, it's just fine. I get it. I'm right there with you.
I will say there are better Scarlet Begonias from 1983.
There's one 2 months earlier that Trey was apparently in attendance for that
Mm.
is quite good. It is Lithe, and it features. It sounds like there's a xylophone happening. Did
Brent
Mickey
Scott-
have a xylophone, or was that Brent?
Tone on one of his keyboards is really bell-like, but it's also really high in the mix, even on the audience.
Very high.
Yeah,
Like it's the first thing you hear. It's amazing.
yeah, it's crazy. I had to switch from the soundboard to the audience tapes because it was too high, and then even on the audience tapes, it's pretty high. And if you're wondering, we're talking about Hartford 101483.
Dick's
Look at
Picks
that.
Volume 6. Very
Dick's Picks
easy.
Volume
to
6,
go
yeah.
find.
And we
This is a
finally
great.
got a Grateful Dead reference in here.
Well, it's a great
About goddamn
segue
time.
because I have a question for you all.
Let's hear
I
it.
actually have a couple questions for you all. So there's a first set to this show. We don't have it. There is. I was curious about this when Phish played the New Year's gag this year. There's a soundboard cut of them playing Long Cool Woman that sounds like it's from the 1980s. I'm wondering if Phish Inc. has the archives of this actual show and are going to release it at some point this year. I have no information on that, but I'm just curious. But it is notable that the only tape that we have that anyone's heard is Scarlet Fire. And I'm curious, like so much of what Phish had to overcome over the next 15, 20 years. I don't think that they really have to overcome it as much anymore. But like when they were really coming up, there were all these comparisons to the Grateful Dead. And it's so fitting that their first tape is them covering the like perfect Grateful Dead's combination, like combo songs. Do you guys like pick another Phish influence for Phish to cover at their first show, what would you want to hear them cover at their first show? Another one of their big influences that like resets the narrative about Phish.
I don't know, like maybe Starship Trooper, which I've yet to hear them actually do in front of an audience for us. So maybe like a Yes cover or something, or King Crimson cover.
Maybe some Frank Zappa.
Some Zappa. Crimson is my pick.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, something off of like Discipline that would just like, you could hear like that origin of the band in there. And that like that it's important to me because it feels like that resets the narrative around the band. Them playing just Scarlet Fire is so jam band one
cliche-ish.
It's jam band 101.
Yeah.
But it wasn't cliche in 1983. I mean, there were Dead cover bands and had been for many, 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 many years. There were bands that you wouldn't argue were Dead cover bands that were covering the Dead, going well back into the early 70s. But that's who they were. That's like the scene they were a part of. You can hear it in Undermine Season 1. They were the Deadheads. When they weren't going to see the Grateful Dead, were still in Vermont and going to see Phish, and they were, they were into that music. That was the scene, and well,
I think it became cliche when the Dead.
There were Deadheads in Dead cover bands in the 80s as well. So they could have gone that route. They were smart enough not to stay in that box.
They're better musicians too, right? And original like composers and stuff. But I also, not than the Dead, I'm saying then like cover bands would be.
Like, but I also trying to fight here?
No, I'm definitely not saying that. I'm saying then a cover band. If you're just going to be a cover band, like, you're not. Phish is never going to be just a cover band.
That's a different kind of ambition.
But I think like when it became cliche was when like the Grateful Dead entered like the pop culture world in a way that like when I was in the 90s in high school, like everybody had Grateful Dead t-shirts and they were on MTV. And so then it became like the hippie band that like that's kind of what people knew about. So then when Phish started to come up, it was more cliche to like say that they were like the Grateful Dead, whether or not that was their main influence or not.
Yeah, we got some good answers here from viewers. Talking Heads, you have to wait till 84 for Talking Heads. Zeppelin, which they do cover, but I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. It's a good question. I think Can You Hear Me Knockin', which happens a couple times in the 84 tapes. That's just such a great guitar song. Like it just, a lot of those early covers were just so Trey could shred, and I really appreciate that.
I wish they would still play that, because the 80s covers of them playing that are actually really, really good. And every time I hear that song, which happens like if I ever turn on rock radio, like that song just immediately comes on. I have to listen to the whole thing. But it's just like it's such a prototype Phish song. I have another question.
Can I quickly address something that's in the chat, which is worth addressing, I think? Someone notes that the Dead covered a lot of songs, and that's true. The Dead covered a lot of songs. So did Phish. Neither of those groups were cover bands. They were bands that played a lot of covers. That's one of the requirements that Mike laid out for Phish. It was like he wanted to always play covers. He wanted to always explore other people's music with this band, and they do less and less of that these days, but boy, when they do it well.
Agreed.
I do.
I just want to address this comment that we got from Rabbit Hole, who says Presence is Zeppelin's best album, and I agree with you, Rabbit Hole.
I love that record.
Thank you. So great.
I believe his name is Rabbit Hole because he's about to throw us down one.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like,
I'm not. I think
really good. It's a really good handle.
I think it's my second favorite Zeppelin album, but I think it's highly, highly underappreciated as a work of art.
That's my number one.
Numbers 3, yeah, 3. It never like really It just never hit me.
I-
In all those years.
It hits me
Hey.
a lot.
Listen to other English folk music instead of Zeppelin 3, but
This
Presence is good.
this is all on
very
brand, incredibly on brand.
Yeah.
Very, very on
Um,
brand. Not,
Let me
not,
give
what
you
else-
some
not only-
Chance recommendations.
Now that we're talking about
Oh
Led
my
Zeppelin album
God.
rankings, what else do we need to know about this show to set us up for our next episode, which is going to take us 1 year forward into late 1984?
Well, I have a question that helps set us up for this.
Yes.
We're going to go around. Everyone's going to give us an answer. So you're in the locker room post 12/2/83. People are outside. Phish, Phish, Phish. No, they're not at all.
Nope.
Megan, what is the advice that you're giving to Phish after this show?
Keep being weird.
RJ?
I mean, I would I would say to them what Trey says to other young musicians: just keep writing your own material. Where's the original material, guys? Come on.
Ooh, that's good.
Jonathan?
We got our asses kicked tonight, but you're gonna go out there next time. You're gonna do it again, and you're gonna do it better. Something like that.
I can see you up in their faces, Jonathan.
I'm getting this like flashback to the one season that Jonathan played left tackle for his high school football team. And
Yeah, I took a few concussions. That explains the rest of my story.
This is great.
we're going down another
I
rabbit
was a
hole.
cheerleader. Shocker. Okay, go ahead, Brian.
This all works. This all really works.
I was just color
Cheerleader turned
commentary.
stoner. Okay.
That was the
Ryan
ball team.
Ryan Storm says find page, which is that's good. That's very appropriate.
That's
I like
yeah.
that.
They do need
That's
some
on
keys.
brand
I
for you, Ryan.
swear, like I've had a couple bands that have friends who played in bands that were trying to figure it out, and I swear every band, like the one piece of advice I give them is like you gotta add keys. Like you need
Mhm.
that sound. So I think that's a good recommendation for these guys.
Brian, what's
Mine
your
is to
advice?
play more requests because clearly it works in the show.
The audience knows what they want.
This is
Listen to
wonderful.
what we have to say, and you guys will never fail. So yeah, what do we have to talk about before the next show? We are talking 1984 Phish, probably the most overlooked year of Phish when all is said and done. I
Wow.
don't think anybody really
Hmm.
talks about what Phish did in 1984.
Well, we're about to.
We're
I'm
about to.
excited. Mhm.
I'll just say that this 40 for 40 project. So the plan is to go. It's probably going to take us the entire year to get to the present day because we're going to have to take breaks to recap Mexico and to recap any Phish shows that might happen this year. So we're going to be doing this all year. So when you guys, those of you listening and watching, give us your feedback. Let us know what you think so we can make it as entertaining as possible. But I think there'll be many more debates about things that don't involve Phish at all, which is great.
Well, and can I say one thing that you noted to us when we were setting this up that I think is just good for context for listeners is we're not trying to find the best show of every year.
Mhm.
We are trying to just thread a very loose narrative of how Phish evolved year to year to year. Some of the shows that we have selected are shows that mean a lot to us as individuals. Some of them are just like really fun representative shows, but we're not trying to find the quote 40 best Phish shows that define the band. We are just trying to find shows that give us an opportunity to dive into where they were at that point in time and that we have a lot of connection to.
Yes, and to Brian's question, each week is going to be a specific show from each year. Yes.
Mhm.
And it's going to be
Yeah.
amazing.
And I'm going to be the special Mexico correspondent, FYI.
Yep. Yep.
That job's already booked.
It's
Somebody's got to do it.
It's true.
Yeah.
So do we want to tell people what we're talking about next week?
Well, have
I
we
think we just more or less did, but we don't.
Yeah.
They can figure it out when they tune in next week to find out what show we're going to do. But I can tell you it is 1983 plus 1 year.
Spoiler.
It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be amazing, and we will. I'll be in Mexico also, but I don't know if I'm corresponding. Am I corresponding with you, Megan, or are you corresponding
Yeah.
with?
No, you have to do it with me.
Okay, all right.
We'll just like
So
make a brief appearance on the recap, maybe, like poolside or something.
Yeah, I think that works. Okay, but we're gonna see you guys next week, Monday afternoon, 4:30 p.m. live. And if you're listening to this afterwards, we try to get it up on Monday nights. We just keep it all Monday. Try to make everybody's Monday better. And I don't know. That's all I got to say. Anything else, guys?
Seems like enough.
This is fun. Thanks, everyone.
We did it.
Thanks, y'all.
See y'all next week.
See ya.